Welcome back to the Tempo Storm deck introduction series for the Witchwood meta, featuring one of the best decks in Standard, even Warlock. When Witchwood was initially released, many players found that playing Cubelock was more reliable than restricting your deck to an even archetype. But with Cubelock's nerfs and fall from tier 1, Gen and company have stepped up to take the mantle of the best Warlock deck. As of the most recent meta snapshot, the deck sits at tier 1. In last weekend's HCT Italy, 205 out of 362 players brought even Warlock, yet only 6 of them reached the top 16. Even Warlock may look weird at first glance, but the power from Gen's hero power allows the deck to fill its hand quickly in order to consistently push out early mountain giants and twilight drakes. The deck is extremely strong and resilient, with many players like Aniziak, Foray, Crane, and General putting up top 50 results with the deck at the end of the June season. This deck has proved itself in recent tournaments, most notably being brought by 11 out of the 16 players at the HCT Summer Championship. To understand why so many players are favoring this deck, let's take a look at what makes this deck tick and why it's such a good choice for ladder. With the ability to life tap every turn, even Warlock can quickly power out drakes and giants to pressure mid-range and control decks. With Sun Fury Protector, we can turn those threats into enormous taunt walls against aggressive decks. Because of the deck restriction alongside Gen, our curve starts on turn 2, so the deck plays many efficient 2-drops to make up for lost tempo. Cards like Defile, Doomsayer, Plated Beetle, and Vulgar Homunculus are great plays versus aggressive strategies. Beetle and Homunculus work double duty at getting on the board early and providing utility versus early minions, as well as pressuring mid-range and control in the early turns. Acidic Swamp Ooze is great versus Odd Paladins, Vine Cleavers, and Unidentified Mauls. Ooze also has applications versus Rogue's hero power to mess up Hench Clan Thug turns and versus Druid, breaking a twig of the World Tree to interfere with Malygos Druid's later turns, while destroying his skull from Cubelock can be game-winning on its own. It's also worth noting that since there are many decks playing the Lich King, Ooze can destroy a Frostmourne if it comes to that. At 4 mana, we find plenty of utility cards, like Hellfire that serves as a board wipe against aggro, and can also upgrade Amethyst Spellstone. Shroom Brewer is a powerful healing option that can heal your face if you get too low, or it can be used to keep a big minion topped off. Hooked Reaver is another one of the big threats that gets activated once you fall to 15 or lower health. The large body accompanied by its natural taunt make this a great card versus aggro, control, and mid-range strategies. The rest of the deck is filled with late game utility cards. Dread Infernal is used to trigger Spellstone, get resurrected with Gul'dan, and to clean up boards of small minions. Skulking Geist is included to fight many of the druids on ladder by destroying their Jasper Spellstones and naturalizes. The Lich King is one of the best 8-drops in Standard and is effective versus aggro, control, and mid-range decks, so it gets an automatic inclusion. Blood Reaver Gul'dan tops the curve as an endgame tool that resurrects Vulgar Homunculus, Hooked Reavers, and Dread Infernal. The deck may look fairly straightforward, but what separates the best players in the world from the rest of the pack? Let's take a closer look at some important scenarios and interactions that will level up your game. The number one thing you should know before playing this deck is that it's not a true control deck. It's deceptive because most of the recent slow Warlock decks have been designed to completely control the game until they can implement their win condition, but even Warlock functions more like a mid-range deck. It's much less about having an empty board and more about deploying larger threats than your opponent. If you start with the coin, you can power out a turn 3 Mountain Giant. If you tap the first 2 turns, don't play anything else. This is one of the strongest starts and one of the biggest draws of playing the deck, since an 8/8 on turn 3 is extremely difficult for many decks to deal with. The reason you can do this on turn 1 is you life tap up to 7 cards, on turn 2 you life tap up to 9 cards, then on turn 3 you'll start with 10 cards on hand, making the Mountain Giant cost 3 mana. Managing your health total is one of the most important skills with the deck. You want to be close enough to 15 health to trigger your Hooked Reavers, but you don't want to bring yourself too low as to allow your opponent to find lethal. In slower matchups, you'll want to use your hero power more liberally to draw through your deck quickly, and to drop your health into Hooked Reaver range. Players have become very efficient at playing around Hooked Reaver, and skilled players will refrain from lowering your health. This comes into play versus matchups like Shudderwock Shaman and Big Spell Mage, since they don't need to attack to win the game, so mages will just refrain from hero powering you, and Shaman just won't attack. In these matchups, Life Tap, Vulgar Homunculus, Hellfire, and Dread Infernal will all play an important role at powering up those Hooked Reavers. Because of the prevalence of Shudderwock Shaman on the ladder, don't forget that Spellbreaker can unfreeze a Mountain Giant that has been hit with a Glacial Shard. In many scenarios, it's frequently correct to play an Acidic Swamp Ooze on turn 2 against Shudderwock Shaman because of its efficiency in contesting Acolyte of Pain and Manatide Totem. An unchecked Acolyte or Totem can dispel disaster for even Warlock, so knowing when and how to Contesto is key to winning early advantages in that matchup. Since Taunt Druid is one of the more popular decks on ladder right now, knowing how to beat them is key to ladder success with Warlock. Mountain Giant is one of the most powerful cards in the Druid matchups because of its resilience to removal spells. Druid's only real answer to a turn 3, turn 4 Mountain Giant is Naturalize. Because of how you need to fill up your hand in order to play Mountain Giant, the drawback of Naturalize can actually be a detriment to Warlock, as it'll end up burning a couple cards from the top of your deck. While not always the case, sometimes it can be correct to play a Twilight Drake before Mountain Giant to act as a sort of lightning rod for a Naturalize. When Blood Reaver Gul'dan brings back your demons, Hooked Reaver won't come back with Taunt, so keep that in mind with playing. Seemingly simple tip, but newcomers to the deck may not realize that Blood Reaver Gul'dan resurrects minions at their base stats, not the stats that they were when they died. One of the benefits of playing Even Warlock is that it has a lot of flexible slots. Plated Beetles can be swapped out for cards like Tainted Zealot to boost the power of Defile and Amethyst Spellstone. Another copy of Acidic Swamp Ooze can be included if you find yourself battling more weapon-based strategies. Usually this means if you're playing versus more Odd Paladin, Odd Rogue, or Malygos Druid, you'll want another Ooze. Crazed Alchemist can be used to fight against problematic cards like Manatide Totem and Flame Tongue Totem, or can be played in Control Mirrors to counter a Doomsayer to pair with a threat to generate a mid-game swing turn. Stubborn Gastropod has found its way into lists, as the Stubborn Snail is a must-kill threat on its own. Gastropod usually fights for the spot that Doomsayer occupies, and it's stronger versus the slower decks in the meta, where Doomsayer is better versus aggro. Some players have played Argent Commander to be able to pressure control and trade into mid-range threats that leaves a 4-2 behind. Many players have taken to running the Black Knight to generate a big swing turn in the mirror by killing a Lich King or a Hooked Reaver. It can also destroy a large minion that has been taunted with Sun Fury Protector. The Black Knight is also great against Taunt Druid, as almost all their threats are taunts, so having an on-demand removal spell stapled to a 4-5 body is fantastic in that matchup. As is always the case, choosing your tech depends a lot on what you're seeing. So feel free to experiment with different numbers of cards in your deck that don't always stick to generally accepted builds. There's always room to gain an edge on the ladder in terms of deck construction, so be sure to tinker with your Even Warlock to counter your local meta. Because of the deck's raw power level and ability to generate large early threats, many professional players have picked up on Even Warlock and found success with it on ladder and in tournaments. The hype behind the deck is very real, and the ability to change out cards to tech for an unexpected meta makes the deck a very flexible and potent threat. The deck can be counterintuitive at times, so be sure to grind some ladder to get your practice in for this season's grind. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of our Witchwood deck introduction series. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to drop a comment below and let us know what deck you'd like to see us discuss next time. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on any of the other great Tempo Storm content on this channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.